Uppers it's the first drug group that we're going to talk about. Yeah, this is, yeah. So let's go ahead and get started. It's not a happy chapter. In 2008, 5.6 million Americans used cocaine or cocaine products. 1.4 million Americans used methamphetamines or for non-medicinal use. 83 million Americans used a tobacco product in 2008, including little tiny guys. 166 million Americans drank coffee last year. Most of them drank it daily. Americans averaged 56 gallons of soft drinks per person in 2008. Most of them were caffeinated. That is 598 12-ounce cans or 359 20-ounce bottles of pop. In 2008, 200 million people use betel nut. They brew it and drink it like coffee, or they chew it and it turns their teeth red and then they look black. In Southeast Asia, Thailand, the area is having a severe problem with a form of methamphetamine called yaba. In the area around the Horn of Africa, the majority of the male population and much of the female population chew khat, a mild stimulant. That's what it looks like. 1.3 billion people worldwide smoke cigarettes. Natural stimulants: cocaine comes from the coca shrub, nicotine comes from the tobacco plant, cathinone comes from the khat bush, ephedrine comes from the ephedra bush, aracholine comes from the betel nut, and caffeine comes from the coffee plant. Synthesized stimulants: methamphetamines, diet pills, methylphenidate, which is the chemical name for Ritalin, and meth-cathinone, which we don't see here, but we do see it in Russia. Stimulants increase the activity in the central nervous system, boosts energy, it raises heart rate and blood pressure, it increases respiration, it reduces appetite, it subdues thirst. The general effects of uppers: they may make the user more alert, active, confident, anxious, restless, and aggressive. Stimulants are used to treat narcolepsy, obesity, and ADHD. Stimulants work by affecting four neurotransmitters: epinephrine, which increases your energy; norepinephrine, which increases your confidence, your feelings of well-being and motivation; serotonin, which increases energy; and dopamine, which increases your energy as well. Most of the neurons affected by the epinephrine and norepinephrine are located in an area of the midbrain called the locus ceruleus. This portion of the brain networks with many parts of the rest of the brain. And the locus ceruleus is right here, right in the middle. When the body needs an extra jolt of energy, epinephrine and norepinephrine are released to provide the energy. When the individual takes uppers, it forces the release of the energy chemicals. These drugs cause the body to react to stress that doesn't exist and makes the individual talkative, hyperactive, and hypervigilant, kind of like Barney Fife. The stronger the stimulant, the longer it takes the body to recover. Large quantities over long periods of time deplete the body's energy stores and leaves the body without reserves. Withdrawal from stimulants can create severe depression that can last for days, weeks, or even months. People tend to build a fairly rapid tolerance to the stimulant, forcing the individual to consume more and more of the substance. Even coffee will require more and more with increased consumption. The reward reinforcement pathway is a natural structure that informs the individual of an activity or substance that supports survival. Hunger satiated, thirst satiated, sexual desire satiated. When a strong stimulant is used, it overstimulates the reward reinforcement pathway, and the body doesn't respond to hunger, thirst, or sexual activity. the brain cannot be satisfied. And this, of course, is a picture of an individual. This is before she started taking stimulants, and this is afterwards. As more and more of the stimulant is used, tolerance builds and the rush in stimulation diminishes. But what does remain in the emotional memory of the effects of the stimulant? This is accomplished by the dopamine stimulation of the reward reinforcement pathway. One of the side effects of long-term stimulant usage can be dehydration and malnourishment. The hypothalamus regulates thirst and hunger. Stimulants fool this part of the brain to think that the individual is neither hungry or thirsty. This can lead to deficiencies of vitamins and minerals as well as damage to the teeth. And this is a lady, this is Christina George. These are her arrest photos. This is her 1995 and 97, 97, 98, 90, 2000. See, she's changing, and here she was in 2002. She has aged more than 7 years. It looks like somebody beat her up in this one. Anyway, this is Sean Wise. He was an addict for 20 years, and he's been 2 years sober. You may remember him as the goalie for the Mighty Ducks. He was a funny guy, and this is him after 20 years of being on stimulants, and this is him 2 years sober. So he looks he looks similar to the way he did when he was a kid in this picture. Of course, he doesn't have any teeth. There you go. Almost killed him. Stimulants, including the weaker ones like nicotine and caffeine, induce vascular spasms and constrict blood flow to organs and tissue. And strangely enough, my mother was sensitive to caffeine to the extent that she'd have vascular spasms when she drank coffee. So she stopped. And I've got a brother that is that sensitive to caffeine as well. Heavy smokers will have a pasty complexion due to the restricted blood flow. This restricted blood flow will slow tissue repair and the healing process. Chronic use of stimulants will weaken blood vessels, increasing the risk of stroke. But at least the stimulant user has increased confidence and stimulated feelings of euphoria. They're more talkative, they're more restless, they're more irritable, they have insomnia, they are paranoid. They tend to be overly aggressive and overly violent. This is a paranoia. Prolonged use of high doses of methamphetamine can lead to a clinical level of paranoia or kick the individual into psychosis. Meth increases the dopamine in the central nervous system. One of the conditions of schizophrenia is an overabundance of dopamine receptor sites. Sometimes the meth user will drift into permanent schizophrenia. And this happened to a student of mine. She thought she was fascinating. She was a Northern Plains tribal member, and her mother was Inuit. She was Inuit. So it was really kind of interesting because when she used meth and kicked her into schizophrenia, and she thought she was Hispanic. She started speaking Spanish, except she didn't know how to speak Spanish. So it just sounded like Spanish. And she claimed her father had just died, and she claimed that her father had murdered her mother. Well, her mother was still alive, but in her Hispanic self, she thought her mother was dead and her father had murdered her, and that he had buried her in the backyard. And they went in and they dug up this I'm laughing. They dug up this backyard, and there wasn't anything there, of course, because at that point they realized that there was something going on. And at that point, she started coming down off of the methamphetamines and realized that she wasn't Hispanic. Nicotine provides almost immediate tolerance. All stimulants in the slower but similar manner develop tolerance rapidly. Dependence is developed with tolerance since the need becomes greater and greater. Nicotine has the strongest dependence level, and we talked about this before. It's the most addictive substances known to man. Cocaine is synthesized from the coca leaf since its introduction in South America with the invasion of the Inca. In Peru, has enjoyed epidemics and lag periods. The first epidemic was at the end of the 19th century. The famous author Robert Louis Stevenson wrote the novel The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in 6 days while taking cocaine as a treatment for tuberculosis. Many have speculated that the two personalities represented in the novel actually represented Stevenson on and off the stimulant. Stevenson may have written the novel to explain to friends his change of personality. And the reality is he did die of tuberculosis. Cocaine won't grow just anywhere like marijuana. Cocaine grows in the moderately high slopes of the Andes Mountains, Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, Colombia, some on the island of Java in Indonesia. Other than that, it doesn't grow anyplace else. Coca leaves don't contain very much alkaloid cocaine. 1 acre of 6 to 8 foot bushes will only produce 1.5 to 2 kilograms or 3 to 4.5 pounds of cocaine. Cocaine refinement begins with stage 1, soaking the leaves in alkali and water. Stage 2 of cocaine refinement is where the workers add gasoline, acetone, or kerosene to create a paste. Stage 3 involves discarding the waste leaves and adding an acid, such as hydrochloric or sulfuric acid. In stage 4, the cocaine paste is mixed with lime and ammonia. The last stage is separating the cocaine hydrochloride from the paste, and it forms a powder. Smuggling cocaine into the United States has been a constant cat and mouse game between smugglers and the DEA since the 1970s. During the Reagan administration, a friend of the president's was killed by smugglers to steal his yacht, and since then the military has been used to stop mass shipments coming in by plane and ship from South America. This is a submarine that they were using to smuggle cocaine. It's a homemade submarine. Today, there is only one sure route into the United States, and that is along the porous border with Mexico. Colombian drug cartels smuggle about 2/3 of their produce in this manner. The last third continues to come over by sea. North America consumes 40 to 50% of the world's cocaine. It is estimated that Americans spent $36.1 billion on cocaine in 2004. In 2019, the figure was $150 billion. Cocaine in the United States averages 84% purity, with prices ranging from $12,000 to $35,000 per kilogram. That's about 2.2 pounds or a brick. There are 1,000 grams in a kilogram. The street value of 1 gram of cocaine is $50 to $200, with an average purity of about 57%. Crack cocaine comes in rocks from 1/10 of a gram to 1/2 a gram, and sell for $10 to $20 per rock. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's 10 rocks. That would be about $100 worth. $100 to $200 worth. Hardcore cocaine users will spend an average of $186 per week on cocaine. Cocaine is actually cheaper than it ever has been. It is estimated that there are probably over 3 million hardcore cocaine users in the United States. The man to the left is pitchman Billy Mays, who OD'd on cocaine at age 51. And if you want to know some of the other people who have overdosed on cocaine, Ike Turner, the rock and roll musician and former husband of Tina Turner, died of cocaine toxicity at age 76 in 2007. Whitney Houston, the singer and actress's death was ruled an accidental drowning with cocaine use and heart disease listed as contributing factor, and that was in 2012. John Belushi, the Saturday Night Live star, died at age 33 from a speedball, a combination of cocaine and heroin, and we're going to hear more about speedballs in the future. That was in 1982. River Phoenix, the actor, died at age 23 from acute multiple drug ingestion, including lethal levels of cocaine and heroin and morphine, and that was in 1993 outside a club in Los Angeles. Chris Farley, similar to his idol John Belushi, actor Chris Farley died at 33 from a speedball overdose of cocaine and morphine, and that was in 1997. Mac Miller, the rapper, died at 26 due to an accidental overdose of fentanyl, cocaine, and alcohol, and that was in 2018. Philip Seymour Hoffman was the Oscar-winning actor. He died at 46 from a mixture of drugs, including heroin, cocaine, benzodiazepines, and amphetamines, and that was in 2014. Lynn Bias, a promising basketball star selected by the Boston Celtics, died at 22 of cardiac arrhythmia induced by a cocaine overdose, and that was in 1986. Michael K. Williams, the Wire actor, died at 54 from an accidental overdose of a combination of drugs, including cocaine, heroin, and fentanyl, in 2021. Old Dirty Bastard, the Wu-Tang Clan rapper, died at 35 from a lethal mixture of cocaine and the synthetic opiate tramadol, which you find in cough syrup. And that was in 2004. Scott Weiland, the former lead singer of Stone Temple Pilots, died at 48 from a toxic mix of cocaine, alcohol, and MDA. And that was in 2015. Corey Haim, the 80s child star, died at 38 from a cocaine overdose, and that was in 2010. David Ruffin of The Temptations died at 50 from a cocaine overdose in 1991. Shannon Hoon, the lead singer of Blind Melon, died at 28 from a cocaine overdose in 1995. Andy Irons, the professional surfer, died at 32 from a cardiac arrest with a mix of drugs, including cocaine, found in his system, and that was in 2010. When the Spanish first arrived in South America, they found many people in the Andes Mountains chewing coca leaves. Most Incan users actually mixed the juice with lime from ground shell or ash to accelerate the introduction of the alkaloid into the brain. Introduction occurs in 3 to 5 minutes. Now, interestingly, I visited Machu Picchu. I have been there. That was in 2003. And when we landed in Cuzco, which is, you have to go to Cuzco before you can go to Machu Picchu, they were selling coca leaves at the airport. I didn't use any. I didn't figure I needed any. But there were people that in our group that felt like they needed to experience cocaine or coca, so they bought some coca leaves. They also, there's a tea that they drink, a coca tea, and there were people that drank the coca tea. I didn't. I didn't figure I needed any. I was pretty healthy in 2003. I was in my 50s and pretty healthy, so I didn't partake. And I'm a pretty boring person anyway. The conquistadores encouraged use of coca to increase the productivity of the Quichua workers. So they kept the Indians that worked in their mines, they kept them on cocaine. They amphetamine them up. In 1859, Albert Newman isolated the active ingredient in coca leaves, cocaine hydrochloride. Isolated, the substance was 200 times more powerful by weight than the coca leaf. The drug was first used as an anesthetic and a medicine to treat depression, tuberculosis, gastric disorder, and asthma. Cocaine wine was popular in France and Italy in the late 1860s. This ushered in the first modern cocaine epidemic as 2 glasses of wine delivered the same amount of cocaine as a line of coke. It took 15 to 30 minutes for the cocaine to take effect after ingesting it in this manner. By the 1880s, patented medicines and drinks began to appear laced with cocaine, opium, morphine, heroin, cannabis, and alcohol. Since no one really understood addiction for the real power of the supplements and their tonics, many people became addicted, especially women. People began introducing cocaine into their systems in new ways. Injecting intravenously introduces the drug into the system in about 30 seconds. Snorting cocaine introduces the substance into the blood in 2 to 5 minutes. Snorting more cocaine is counterproductive as the drug is a vasoconstrictor. So once introduced into the nasal passage, it slows the absorption of any new cocaine. As the cocaine wears off, the nasal passage opens back up, causing a runny and sniffling nose. Smoking cocaine-laced cigarettes were introduced in 1914, but the high temperature of the cigarette destroyed most of the psychoactive substance in the cigarette. Because cocaine is a natural substance, it tends to be metabolized very quickly, and its effects dissipate much faster than synthetic stimulants. The half-life of cocaine is 30 to 90 minutes and is detectable in the urine for up to 36 hours after ingestion. Cocaine is used as a topical anesthetic because of its powerful vasoconstriction capabilities. Since cocaine receptors are found in the smooth muscles of the lungs, cocaine use will cause the bronchi to dilate. Synthetic cocaine produces products mimic the effect of cocaine for eye, dental, and cutaneous surgeries, and these medications are known as lidocaine, procaine, xylocaine, and of course novocaine that they use on your mouth. Cocaine excites the user by blocking the reuptake of the neurotransmitters acetylcholine, dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine. The abundance of these neurotransmitters gives the individual a feeling of well-being, mastery, omnipotence, euphoria, and general excitement. Cocaine metabolizes fairly rapidly, leaving the 4 neurotransmitters vulnerable to reuptake when the cocaine is gone. Cocaine's positive effects disappear fairly suddenly after 5 or 10 minutes. This absence of the previous feelings is referred to as the crash and may last for hours, days, or even weeks. Cocaine overstimulates the release of dopamine. If this occurs over time, it triggers the fright center in the brain, causing paranoia. Cocaine also overstimulates the release of epinephrine and norepinephrine. If this occurs over time, the individual may suffer from lethargy, low blood pressure, and anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure. Cocaine causes the overstimulation of serotonin, which not only makes the individual happy, but increases sexual activity as well. If this continues to happen over time, the individual may suffer from insomnia, agitation, and severe emotional depression. Cocaine blocks the metabolism of acetylcholine, increasing alertness, memory, and aggression. If overstimulation occurs over time, the person may suffer from tremors, memory lapses, mental confusion, and possibly hallucinations. Some people actually use cocaine as an aphrodisiac, since at low doses it enhances sexual desire and prolongs ejaculation. However, in some cases it causes spontaneous ejaculation. In higher doses and with chronic use, cocaine may cause erectile dysfunction and a disinterest in sex. The lack of sexual need may lead to high-risk sexual behavior and unusual sexual practices, since sexual need no longer exists for the individual, and they may become sexually abusive. For cocaine users who are prone to violence, cocaine makes them more aggressive and violent because inhibitory functions are suppressed in the cingulate gyrus and the temporal lobes. Emotional triggers are overstimulated in the amygdala. The fright center is hyperactivated in the limbic system. And at this point, okay, yeah, okay. So my first wife took off and decided that she didn't want to be married or a mother anymore. So she took off to our home. She took off to Indiana. I married her out of high school. And so while she was in Indiana, one of the things that happened was she became a waitress at a truck stop. And she started dealing speed. So she became enamored with the individual that was supplying her with with her product, and she told me about some of her sexual exploits with her boyfriend. And of course, she came back. She decided to come back. Actually, what happened was she got busted, and they were trying to get her to tell them where she was getting her supplies, and she decided to run off to where I was. I was in Texas. I was stationed in. This is when I was in the military. I was stationed in Lubbock, Texas. So she talked my mother into giving her enough money for the bus, and she rode the bus from Muncie, Indiana to Lubbock, Texas, with a supply of drugs. So, and what I did when she got there was she showed me what she had. I threw it away. I threw it all away. She had like a garbage bag full of marijuana and a baggie full of White Crosses. I threw them all away. She said, "You just threw away $2,000 worth of stuff." Anyway, it's not important. Okay, where was I? For cocaine users who are prone to violence, cocaine makes them more aggressive and violent because inhibitory functions are suppressed in the cingulate gyrus and the temporal lobes. Emotional triggers are overstimulated in the amygdala. The fright center is hyperactivated in the limbic system. When cocaine is combined with alcohol, the result is a substance called cocaethylene, which causes increased agitation, euphoria, and violence. In one study of domestic violence, all the perpetrators had used alcohol on the day of the violence, and 67% had used cocaine with the alcohol. Cocaethylene is also more likely to induce heart conduction anomalies that may lead to a heart attack. This substance has a half-life 3 times that of cocaine, and therefore can cause prolonged high blood pressure, and this is what killed Lynn Bias. While the brain gains feelings of euphoria and well-being from cocaine, the heart is being abused by this substance. Cocaine causes the heart rate to increase and the blood vessels to constrict, raising blood pressure 20 to 30 units. Small muscle repair stops during cocaine use. The stress on the heart and the muscle damage being done by its use can cause damage to the heart muscle, coronary arteries, and other blood vessels of the heart. Remember, cocaine is the vasoconstrictor. Prolonged high blood pressure weakens blood vessel walls in the brain, leading to a stroke. Cocaine also causes a curious condition where the calcium and fat deposits collect in blood vessels, causing heart attacks or stroke. Cocaine crosses a placental barrier, meaning that when mom uses, her fetus uses, also within seconds. Damage is done to the fetus's blood vessels in a similar reaction to that of the mother and may result in miscarriage, stroke, placental separation, and later after birth, SIDS. One study looking at 717 babies born to cocaine-using mothers found that they were born on an average 1.2 weeks early, 1.2 pounds lighter, 1 inch shorter, a head that is 3/4 of an inch smaller in circumference, The babies are born agitated, irritable, with high blood pressure. The baby is usually malnourished because that is the lifestyle of the cocaine and amphetamine user. Escaping from the cocaine soaked placental environment does not remove the child from danger. Stimulant users are often inattentive and uncaring about the needs of others, and this includes their infants, which results in emotional deprivation for the child, neglect of the child, and bonding problems. Studies show that rates of mental delays are double among stimulant exposed children. All is not bleak. With concentrated postnatal care, these infants catch up with their peers by toddlerhood. Now, one of the problems is that if you're snorting cocaine while you're pregnant, one of the things that will happen is that it arrests growth. So if you're snorting a lot of cocaine, then potentially your child will be born with certain anomalies, mainly because you were using when that part was supposed to be developing. So this was really popular. Snorting cocaine was really popular in the 80s, in the 1980s. It had just become really popular. So the wealthy people, I was working at a children's hospital in Omaha, and the wealthy people of Omaha were snorting cocaine, and some of the women became pregnant, and some of the babies that they gave birth to had problems, had a lot of problems, a lot of developmental problems. Most of the babies didn't survive, but because I was working at Children's Hospital at NICU, neonatal intensive care unit, we got those babies. It was really tragic seeing those babies come in. And we really haven't seen anything like that since, because cocaine use was really popular. They weren't really doing anything else. They were just snorting cocaine. So it was now, of course, there's fentanyl. There's all kinds of drugs that you can take, and as you can see from the overdose list of people that have overdosed, usually they mix their drugs. But back then it was just cocaine, and the cocaine was really doing a number on the babies, mainly because the babies stopped growing whatever part they were dealing with when the mother was snorting cocaine, and it was really tragic. I won't go into some of the things that we saw, but not a really good idea. Methamphetamines will do a similar number to a infant if the mother is using during pregnancy. Tolerance of the euphoric effect begins with the first usage of cocaine. Increased usage has been seen of 25 times the level within days. This is due to the adaptation of the brain to dopamine stimulation in the nucleus accumbens. Tolerance is to the euphoric effect only, since paranoia increases, as does cardiovascular effects. Withdrawal from cocaine use is very real, despite the misperceptions of researchers in the 1990s. All the crash symptoms become accentuated and prolonged depending on the dosage used, frequency of use, and the length of use. Anhedonia, not being able to experience pleasure, lack of energy, emotional depression, loss of motivation, anxiety, vivid and unpleasant dreams, insomnia, increased appetite, psychomotor agitation, intense craving for the drug. Cycle of quitting and relapse of stimulants. After a binge session with the drug, the individual crashes, sleeps for a prolonged period, awakens with renewed energy, and swears off the drug forever. The individual feels better for a few days and begins to feel as they did before they began using the drug. 7 to 10 days after quitting, the craving starts to build, energy levels drops. Emotional depression sets in as they can find no pleasure in their surroundings. Another couple of weeks or a month, they relapse, not being able to deal with the depression or the ever-increasing craving for the drug. While cocaine overdoses are common because of the rapid metabolization, the effects are rarely fatal. In large city emergency rooms in 2004, 41% of the visits were due to cocaine usage, most because the individual felt as if they were dying. The U.S. averages between 2 to 3,000 stimulant deaths every year, either from the initial stimulatory stage that causes seizures, hypertension, hyperthermia, stroke, or tachycardia, or later with the depression stage from extreme respiratory depression and coma. Some people will experience inverse tolerance where they become more sensitive to cocaine's effects. Long-term cocaine or amphetamine usage may lead to tactile hallucinations called formications, the sensation that tiny bugs are crawling on the user's skin. The user will sometimes scratch themselves bloody trying to rid themselves of the imaginary pests. And this is one of the ways you can tell if somebody is using either cocaine or methamphetamine. They tend to scratch themselves all the time. They seem to be rubbing their faces. Usually it's just in one spot, so they'll rub themselves raw. Cocaine and amphetamine usage may also cause dental problems for the user. This is usually caused from poor nutrition, poor dental hygiene, and the acidic effects of the drug. The individual also tends to suffer dehydration that causes the gums to recede, which is always attractive. Seizures are sometimes caused by excessive cocaine or amphetamine usage. 2 to 10% of cocaine users will have seizures, 3 times more women than men. Cocaine and amphetamine users can sometimes suffer from gastrointestinal problems, gastric ulcers, retroperitoneal fibrosis, visceral infarction, intestinal ischemia, gastrointestinal tract perforation, and colonic ischemia. Ischemia is blood clots, like a stroke. Another possible side effect of cocaine usage comes from dopamine changes in the cerebellum from cocaine or amphetamine toxicity. The individual suffers from involuntary writhing, flailing, jerking, or sinuous movements of the arms and legs. This is sometimes referred to as meth or crack dancing. And this is a picture of that. This is a video, maybe.
What we have is a claim by the plaintiff that the defendant is obligated to her for failure to pay back rentals, utilities, and also for the cost of a, DNA paternity test that the two of them engaged in. Apparently, the two of them have taken the test and directed that it be furnished to me for my inspection with whomever. Well, in other words, if he's not the father, then she pays. If he is the father, she gets paid. That's good. That's good. That ain't bad. Well, yes, I'm not going to try to report. Well, this chill just a little. Yes, sir. Right? Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Your Honor. Judge O'Brien. You know how to act better. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Stop. I ain't trying to show out. Would you stop? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, I'll try not. Can you hold still, or are you under the influence? Under the influence. Hey. Under the influence. Not right now. Under the influence. But that woman there, she done drove me down influence a lot of things that I said I'd never do. He gonna lie. How can I? When it's the truth. God knows. Oh, God. I wouldn't bring him into it. You please. How would you take care of him if officially you're unemployed? What's the I wasn't employed then. You were unemployed. I wasn't unemployed then. Yes, you were. I was selling. No, excuse me, Your Honor. He was. Now, he was doing that. But he was receiving his daughter's Social Security check for her mother's death. And he wasn't giving me none like that. Everybody excuse me. Were you let him go. I'm telling the truth. Let him tell the truth. Okay, yes, ma'am. Let him go. I have a purpose. You're showing a classic example. All that kinetic movement. I'm sorry, Your Honor. Too much energy. This just, I'm sorry, but it's just hard on me when someone says something. The residual effects from. So you've already said that you were moving merchandise. I'm not lying. I'm not denying. I'm here to tell the truth. Didn't I say? Didn't I raise my right hand? I don't care who hear the truth. The only one can condemn me is God. But, Your Honor, you may get a little remark, he worketh in mysterious ways. Don't he? Don't he? Yes. He does. He works through you right now. What have you decided? You've candidly admitted that you've been moving merchandise. Oh, hey, Arkansas know it. Who don't know it? When's the last time you've been selling? I ain't sold no dope in a long time, Your Honor. I've been smoking dope, and the reason why. You want to know the reason why? For 38 years, I said I never smoked no dope. For 38 years. But I found out one thing. Never say what you want. The symptoms he is exhibiting, in my experience, he is actively under the influence. Mm-hmm. He's a crackhead. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I even admitted that. No, he don't. No, he didn't. Not at first. No, he didn't. But now I got the impression this is a nice, interesting little thing on a TV show. He's under oath. He is, in fact, a retired deputy sheriff. Ain't no secret. I got busted selling dope. Excuse me. The testimony here that you give is under oath, subject to penalties of perjury. There you go. Excuse me. And what I have here is a confession by somebody that looks like they're still on extended parole as a habitual offender after having a long... I've been out of the joint a long time ago. Not long. The last 3 years you got was imposed January 15, 19...
Okay, that was him dancing. Crack dancing. Schizophrenia is caused from too much dopamine in the mesolimbic pathway. It is normally caused by a hereditary imbalance or a disease state that affects this area. Since cocaine and amphetamines increase dopamine in this area, it can trigger stimulant-induced paranoid schizophrenia. The main effects are auditory, visual, or tactile hallucinations and paranoid delusions. Stimulant-induced psychosis is impossible to differentiate from organic psychosis. Psychotic symptoms may disappear with abstinence, but it may take hours, days, or even months. 1/3 to 1/2 of chronic cocaine users will develop mild transient paranoia. With repeated use after a psychotic episode, smaller and smaller doses will trigger psychotic episodes. Polydrug use is very common among cocaine users because the individual may need chemical assistance to come down off their stimulation. The most common drugs used with cocaine are alcohol, heroin, sedative hypnotics, nicotine. A person who smokes cigarettes is 22 times more likely to use cocaine than a non-smoker. While the purity of the cocaine coming into the country averages 80 to 90%, most marketed cocaine has been cut with substances to increase profits. They cut them with baby laxatives, lactose, vitamin B, aspirin, mannitol, sugar, tetracaine, and procaine. Injecting any drug is dangerous, but injecting street drugs is especially so. The user can never be sure of the purity of the drug. The drug may be contaminated with dangerous substances that are not meant to be introduced into the human body. Bacteria and viruses may be introduced. 50 to 90% of IV drug users are infected with hepatitis C from using contaminated needles. And that happened to the student I was just talking about. She has hepatitis C. Manufacturers and refiners of cocaine have had known that in the paste of freebase state, cocaine could be smoked without destroying the euphoric properties. When freebase is mixed with marijuana and smoked, it is referred to as bazooka, busuco, or pasta. This form of ingestion gives the user a more intense and immediate effect than snorting. Crack or freebase has 4 properties that make it a sought commodity. The melting point is higher, 195 degrees, as compared to the powder, 98 degrees. It reaches the brain faster when smoked. This form is more readily absorbed by the fat cells in the brain, giving it a more intense reaction. Higher doses of cocaine can be ingested a shorter period of time. Any smoked cocaine products will produce a more intense effect than snorted cocaine. This is true even though most of the cocaine product is lost in the air, 75% in a pipe, 50% in a cigarette. Hence, more cocaine has to be smoked to get a strong effect. Even when cocaine is smoked or injected, the drug is metabolized rapidly in 15 to 20 minutes and must be renewed to get a strong effect. Crack gives a rush that only lasts a few seconds and euphoria and excitation that only lasts a few minutes, 5 to 20. As soon as the effect dissipates, the individual feels irritable, dysphoric, which means uneasy, and anxious. For this reason, crack is almost always smoked in a binge pattern. Crack does have some fairly unpleasant side effects. Makes you thirsty, makes you cough, gives you tremors, dries out your skin. You have slurred speech, blurred vision, crack keratitis, abrasion of the eye from trying to light your crack pipe. Cracked thumb hands, burns on hands and callus on thumb from lighting a crack pipe, and crack burns, facial burns from lighting the pipe. Crack pipes are really short, and so you're flipping it really close to your face. You're trying to light it really close to your face. Psychological side effects of smoking crack: paranoia, craving for the drug, asocial behavior, attention problems, irritability, drug dreams, hyperexcitability, visual and auditory hallucinations, depression, cocaine psychosis, high-risk sexual behavior. Respiratory side effects from smoking crack: chest pains, pneumonia, coughs, crack lung, decreased ability to diffuse CO2, hemorrhage, respiratory failure, death due to anesthetization of the respiratory center of the medulla. Crack or freebase can be mixed with marijuana to create caviar, champagne, grimmies, fry daddies, cocoa puffs, hubba, or woolies. That's what they call them. Users may combine crack with PCP or ketamine to make space basing, whack, tragic magic. Mixing crack with tar heroin creates speedballs, hot rocks, or Belushi rocks. When crack or cocaine is mixed with wine, it is called crack coolers. In 2004, 4,500 deaths occurred from the direct or indirect effects of cocaine. Cocaine overdose doesn't always kill, but results in tachycardia and hyperventilation accompanied by a feeling of impending death. Death usually results from cardiac arrest, seizures, stroke, respiratory failure, or hypothermia. Social consequences: because using crack can lead to risky sexual behavior, children are sometimes produced in circumstances that are not optimum. Crack smokers have social problems and they don't relate to their own offspring any better. Crack smokers show high rates of neglect, abandonment, and abuse of their children. There are high rates of single and no-parent families. Women willing to trade sex for crack are very common, and then it starts all over again. The physical and mental effects, and I need to tell you, there were stories when I first arrived on the reservation back in 2016, that there were women on the reservation that were selling their children for sex because they were meth heads. Okay, so you think, crazy white people, they'll do anything. But this is your reservation. These are women from your reservation that have done these things. So, I mean, it's not just African Americans. It's not just white people. It's not just Hispanics. It is indigenous people as well. The physical and mental effects of cocaine and amphetamines are similar. Cocaine is about twice as expensive as amphetamines. Cocaine gives a greater rush and more intense high than amphetamines, but amphetamines allow for more prolonged energy. Amphetamines effect lasts 6 to 9 times longer. Amphetamines are more likely to cause addiction. When I was talking about my first wife, she was dealing speed to truck drivers so they could stay awake. This is back in when was that? In the 70s. This is back in the 70s when truck drivers there were no limits on how long they could stay, they could drive. So they could drive for 24 hours straight if they wanted to. One of the reasons why when you drive along the interstate, you see so many trucks parked at night is because they're only allowed to drive for a select amount of time. I think it's 8 hours. I think that they can only drive for 8 hours a day or something like that. And then they have to park their truck. That's why the truck stops are bigger. That's why the rest stops are packed with trucks at night. Amphetamines are synthetic stimulants that provide similar effects as cocaine, but cheaper and more prolonged. Amphetamines are called uppers, speed, crack, crystal, ice, shabu, and glass. My wife and I are watching a television show called Dark Winds, and right now they're in Los Angeles looking for somebody that is dealing ice. So there you go. Amphetamines are snorted, they're injected. Amphetamines are ingested orally. Worldwide, 33 million people used amphetamines and methamphetamines in 2003. Speed used to come in several forms: amphetamines, crosstops, white crosses, and cartwheels. Biphetamine, black beauties, dexedrine, dexies or beans, benzedrine, bennies, and methadone. Amphetamines were first synthesized in 1887. It was used by both sides during World War II. It was used as a diet pill in the 1950s and 1960s. The hippies fueled their psychedelic experience with street speed, marijuana, and LSD. Most of the street speed either came from the legal doses or from diet pills. Amphetamines became a Schedule II drug in the 1970s. Street chemists began producing crank, methamphetamine sulfate, and crystal, methamphetamine hydrochloride, in the 1980s and 1990s. These chemists were able to convert the active ingredient chemicals in cold medication, phenylpropanolamine, ephedrine, and pseudoephedrine into crank and crystal. In the 1990s, a new, stronger methamphetamine began to be produced called ice, glass, batu, or shabu, dextroisomer methamphetamine. This form later came to be known as crystal meth, tina, peanut butter, deadhead, chalk, tweak, yellow rock, glass, or rose quartz speed. The profile of the typical methamphetamine user is white male, 19 to 40 in the West, and especially Hawaii. An equal number of women abuse the drugs as men. Meth is particularly rampant in the gay community, where it is the third most popular drug after alcohol and marijuana. Amphetamines can be cooked in laboratory facilities. Initially, biker gangs cooked the drugs, Hells Angels and the Gypsy Jokers. Recently, Mexican gangs have taken over the manufacture. The DEA estimates that there are over 300 ways to manufacture methamphetamine from pseudoephedrine, and for this reason, cold medicine has been controlled and put behind the counter so you can't get to it. Snorting methamphetamine is more toxic to the nasal mucosa than snorting cocaine and may cause irritation and pain. The most intense high comes from injecting amphetamines directly into the bloodstream. Sclerosis and pain often result from injection. Sclerosis is where it turns it hard. Methamphetamine it turns the vein hard. Methamphetamine is extremely bitter and takes much longer to get the effect to the brain. Amphetamines last 4 to 6 hours as compared to 10 to 90 minutes for cocaine. It lasts longer. Amphetamines force the increase of the neurotransmitters norepinephrine, epinephrine, and dopamine because it forces the release of these neurotransmitters from terminal vesicles. It reverses the reabsorption pumps, forcing more neurotransmitter into the synapse. And it Enzymes that metabolize the neurotransmitters are blocked by the amphetamines. Prolonged use of amphetamines reduces the body's ability to produce the effective neurotransmitters. Research shows norepinephrine reduction as long as 6 months after drug use has ceased. Research also shows a 24% reduction of dopamine, resulting in difficulty feeling pleasure. Thus, after heavy use, for the individual to feel normal, they have to use the drug. Methamphetamine also causes a degeneration of serotonin producing cells. You're doing away with your happiness. Research of methamphetamine users found that they had an 11.3% reduction in the gray matter of their hippocampus, their cingulate gyrus, paralimbic cortices. These areas affect your craving, mood, emotions, and memory. However, brains on methamphetamines are actually larger due to swelling. Amphetamines cause increased energy, increased heart rate, raised body temperature, rapid respiration, higher blood pressure, dilation of bronchial vessels, appetite suppression. Binging on amphetamines can result in not sleeping for 3 to 10 days. Tolerance of amphetamine is fairly rapid and extreme. A normal dosage is 15 to 30 milligrams. Long-term users may use as much as 5,000 milligrams a day. Effects on these individuals: sleep deprivation, heart toxicity, blood vessel toxicity, severe malnutrition. Overdose may result in convulsions, hyperthermia, cardiovascular collapse. Unlike most drugs, amphetamines are abused as much or more by women than men. This may lead to use during pregnancy, which results in irritable baby syndrome, intolerance to light and touch, tremors, muscle coordination problems, abnormal reflexes, sucking and swallowing problems, disturbed sleep. Other problems that might occur for the baby born to a methamphetamine user is premature delivery, congenital deformities, clubfoot or limb abnormalities, gastric problems, intestines protruding into the stomach, placental separation and hemorrhage, being potentially lethal to both mother and baby, intrauterine brain hemorrhage and strokes, HIV, hepatitis B and C. If the baby survives gestation, they may have developmental problems, growth and developmental delays, learning disabilities, increased incidence of ADHD, increased risk for rage disorder, greater incidence of SIDS. Disability rates range around 33%. Amphetamines produce mild, intense euphoria, alertness, sexual feelings, sense of well-being, and confidence. After prolonged use, irritability, paranoia, anxiety, aggression, mental confusion, poor judgment, impaired memory, and hallucinations. Since amphetamines cause an abundance of neurotransmitters that mimic sexual gratification, using the drug becomes a substitute for sexual activity. Amphetamines will also produce violence in people prone to violence because the drug causes people to be suspicious, paranoid, and overconfident. This proclivity for violence among meth users can lead to child abuse and neglect. In Oregon in 2004, 1,850 meth labs were busted, and a full 80% of the child abuse and neglect cases involved meth users. Excessive amphetamine usage can lead to amphetamine psychosis, just as with cocaine, hallucinations, loss of contact with reality, speech patterns that are indistinguishable from paranoid schizophrenia. Since these symptoms are caused by excess dopamine released by the drug, psychotic episodes can be induced at fairly low doses in individuals prone to excess dopamine. Some individuals may have immediate psychosis, while others may use for years with no problem. Crystal meth seems to have the strongest effect on the brain chemistry, and since it has fewer cardiovascular effects, can be smoked in larger quantities. The result is more severe paranoia, hallucinations, hypervigilant thinking, suicidal depression, and addictive use. 9.4% of children 2 to 17 in the United States have been diagnosed with ADHD in their lifetime. 8.1% of U.S. adults between 18 and 44 have been diagnosed with ADHD. 129 million children worldwide, 7.2%, have been diagnosed with ADHD. In 2016, 6,100,000 children have been diagnosed with ADHD, up from 4,400,000 in 2003. And that is in the United States, of course. ADHD is caused by a depletion of dopamine. Amphetamines are used to treat ADHD because they increase dopamine and block its metabolism. Methylphenidate, also known as Ritalin, there's about 10 million prescriptions per year in the United States. D-amphetamine, Adderall, 7.7 million prescriptions per year. Edomexetine, Strattera, 5.8 million prescriptions per year. And Pimeline, Cylert, which we don't have any figures for. Amphetamines work on ADHD 75% of the time. Research shows that children taking amphetamine therapy for ADHD in the long term have an increased risk of alcohol and drug abuse as adults. Half of children with ADHD have comorbid ODD, oppositional defiant disorder. If left untreated, these individuals are more likely to progress to more serious problems such as stealing, vandalism, and arson. One of the main uses for amphetamines throughout the 20th century was as a diet pill, but every time a new drug hit the market, it seemed to cause its own set of problems. One such problem came with the two amphetamines phentermine and fenfluramine, marketed as fen-phen. Given in tandem, the drugs caused heart valve damage in select women. In 1999, the drugs were taken off the market. Stimulants are and have been used over the world for centuries. Khat in the Middle East, betel nut in the Far East, yohimbe in Africa, ephedra in Mediterranean area. Khat is a mild stimulant found in the Middle East. Smuggling of this drug into the United States has become more prevalent as more and more immigrants from the area come into the United States. The key stimulant in the leaf is cathinone, which evaporates if the leaf isn't used within 48 hours after harvesting. This substance is said to produce an effect between caffeine and methamphetamine. Methcathinone is a synthetic version of cathinone. This drug is used extensively in the Horn of Africa and on the Arabian Peninsula. In Yemen, half the population uses khat, and a family may spend 1/3 of their income on the drug. And this is Yemen right here. This drug is the driving force of the economies of many of the countries in the area. The drug is used socially. Chronic khat use can cause physical exhaustion and suicidal depression when withdrawn. Synthetic cathinone is known as methcathinone. While this is only found sparingly in the United States, it is much more common in Europe and in fact represents 20% of the illicit drug use in the Russian Republic. Methcathinone is much more intense than khat and is addictive as methamphetamines. With this drug, there is more dopamine reduction, and so Parkinsonianism is more common. Betel nuts come from the betel nut palm and are found all over southern Asia. It is used extensively in India, Pakistan, the Arab world, Taiwan, Malaysia, the Philippines, New Guinea, Polynesia, southern China, and Africa. Worldwide, 200 to 450 million people use betel nuts. In Taiwan, 17% of men and 1% of women use this substance. One recent controversy in Taiwan is the betel nut beauties, who man betel nut kiosks while dressed provocatively to attract male customers. Some authorities are demanding more modesty for fear of compromising public morals. The active ingredient in betel nut is ericoline, which induces an increase in epinephrine and norepinephrine in the central nervous system. This causes a mild euphoria, excitation, and a decrease in fatigue. The juice of the betel nut is dark red and stains the mouth red to black. Ericoline and muscarine are fairly toxic and cause mouth and esophagus irritation that might lead to cancer in the area. 7% of chronic users develop a cancer. In India, betel nuts are mixed with sweetened tobacco to make a product known as gutka. Yohimbine is the extract from the yohimbe tree found in Africa. The tree is a member of the coffee family, and the extract is bitter and spicy and often brewed in a similar manner to coffee. The active ingredient in yohimbine is an alpha-2 adrenergic antagonist that increases the neurotransmitter norepinephrine. Yohimbine has been used for centuries as a mild aphrodisiac and sexual rejuvenator. Yohimbine's sexual side effects seem to stem from its ability to increase penile blood flow. It has been used to treat erectile dysfunction and is reputed to induce sexual arousal in women. The drug does increase blood pressure and heart rate. Male enhancement products include male performance, yohimbe power, manpower, and Aphrodine. It is also found in Sobi Energy. Yohimbine serves as a local anesthetic. In larger doses, it may produce a mild euphoria and sometimes hallucinations. At toxic levels, it can produce paralysis of the respiratory system and death. Ephedra is a bush that grows in deserts all over the world. The drug that it produces is ephedrine. This drug is a mild to moderate stimulant that is used medicinally to treat asthma, narcolepsy, allergies, and low blood pressure. Ephedrine is also known as Marwith and Mahuang and has been used medicinally by the Chinese for 5,000 years. Ephedrine was first synthesized in 1885 and for decades was the only effective treatment for asthma. Ephedrine's effects are less severe than amphetamines, though a toxic level is more likely to lead to psychosis. Ephedrine and pseudoephedrine are the active ingredients in many cold products. They also make up the molecule that is converted to make methamphetamine and methcathinone. This substance has also been implicated in sports doping scandals and so was banned by the NFL and illegal in Ohio. The sale of cold remedies is now controlled to prevent the hoarding of enough of the substance to convert into the more destructive drugs. Caffeine is the most popular stimulant in the world, mood-altering drug in the world, habit-forming drug in the world. 85% of the people in the United States consume substantial amounts of caffeine every day. Caffeine is naturally found in coffee, tea, and chocolate. Caffeine is put in many products to give us energy. It's put in soda pop, energy drinks, and over-the-counter energy supplements. Water is the most widely consumed beverage in the world. Tea is the second most widely consumed beverage. Tea has been consumed in China for 4,700 years. Tea has become ritualized in many cultures like Japan and China. The English discovered tea from Portuguese traders, and the country became obsessed with it. To this day, 4 o'clock is tea time in England when everyone stops and takes a spot of tea. Coffee was first cultivated in Ethiopia in 650 AD, and from there slowly spread into Europe, though along the way many cultures banned it as an intoxicant. In the United States, each coffee drinker consumes an average of 20 pounds of coffee a year. 8 ounces of brewed coffee will deliver about 135 milligrams of caffeine. 8 ounces of instant coffee will deliver about 95 milligrams of caffeine. 8 ounces of decaf coffee will still deliver about 7 milligrams of caffeine. Archaeological evidence indicates that indigenous people in Central America brewed coca products as early as 2,600 years ago. From the Mayans, this practice spread to the rest of South and Central America, power brokers, the Aztecs, and the Incas. Cacao was originally marketed in Europe as an aphrodisiac, but soon became merely candy. Cocoa has cocoa has a small amount of caffeine, but other active ingredients in the substance act as stimulants as well. Theobromine. In the late 19th and early 20th century, manufacturers of cola soft drinks replaced cocaine with caffeine as an energy boost. Some of the caffeine comes from the cola nut from the African cola tree, but most of today comes from caffeine removed from decaffeinated coffee. Energy drinks began with the invention of Red Bull in 1987. Red Bull delivers 80 milligrams of caffeine in an 8.3-ounce can. Red Bull also contains taurine, ginseng, guarana, glucose, B-complex vitamins, minerals, and carbohydrates. 8 ounces of brewed coffee delivers 135 milligrams of caffeine. Sobe Adrenaline Rush also delivers 80 milligrams of caffeine in an 8.3-ounce can. Starbucks 2X shot delivers a whopping 105 milligrams of caffeine in just a 6.5-ounce can. 12 ounces of Mountain Dew delivers 54 milligrams of caffeine. 12 ounces of Dr. Pepper delivers 41 milligrams of caffeine. 12 ounces of Pepsi Cola delivers 38 milligrams of caffeine. 12 ounces of Coca-Cola delivers 35 milligrams of caffeine. 16 ounces of Rockstar delivers 240 milligrams of caffeine. 16 ounces of Full Throttle delivers 200 milligrams of caffeine. 16 ounces of Monster delivers 160 milligrams of caffeine. 16 ounces of Mountain Dew Kickstart delivers 90 milligrams of caffeine. A new phenomenon that has hit the bar scene is to drink vodka mixed with Red Bull. It's known as birch. This is reputed that this mixture will slow the process of getting drunk and results in a less of a hangover the next morning, and all of that is not true. Deaths due to overconsumption of Red Bull have led to banning the drink in several countries. France, Denmark, and Canada regulate Red Bull. Guarana is the national drink of Brazil. Guarana comes from the guarana shrub, which produces beans that have about 2 times the caffeine as coffee beans. The Brazilian drink normally delivers about 30 milligrams of caffeine in a 12-ounce can. Mate is a plant whose leaves are brewed like tea. Mate is the national drink of Argentina and delivers between 35 and 130 milligrams of caffeine per 8-ounce serving. 3% of the world's caffeine comes from mate. Caffeine is a very bitter chemical. It's an alkaloid in a class of chemicals called xanthines. It is found in more than 60 plants around the world. The half-life of caffeine is 3 to 7 hours. It takes 15 to 35 hours for caffeine to clear the system. Swedes average 425 milligrams of caffeine per day. The English average 445 milligrams of caffeine per day. Americans average 211 milligrams of caffeine a day. 17% from tea, 16% from soft drinks, 60% from coffee. About half of all Americans drink 3.3 cups of coffee a day. 20% of U.S. adults consume more than 350 milligrams of caffeine per day. 3% of U.S. adults drink more than 650 milligrams of caffeine per day. 65% of the 450 different soft drinks produced in the United States actually contain caffeine. Caffeine is used in several prescriptions and over-the-counter medications, bronchodilators, decongestants, diuretics, analgesics, alertness aids, appetite suppressants, menstrual pain controls. As a vasoconstrictor, it can work on migraine headaches. Caffeine works by inhibiting the effect of adenosine. Adenosine is a neuromodulator that depresses mood. It induces sleep. It has anticonvulsant properties. It causes low blood pressure. It slows the heart rate. It dilates the blood vessels. Caffeine's effect is controlled by heredity. For those sensitive to caffeine, 350 milligrams per day may cause anxiety, insomnia, gastric irritation, high blood pressure, nervousness, and flushed face. One study where subjects were given 500 milligrams of caffeine showed a 32% elevation of the stress hormones for an extended period of time. Caffeine is lethal at 10 grams. That's 100 cups of coffee or 185 cans of Mountain Dew. In susceptible people, too much caffeine can trigger nervousness. Caffeine is one of the substances that people prone to the panic attacks should avoid. Counselors should ask their clients about their caffeine consumption, as sensitivity and excess amounts might create artificial anxiety. Sorry, I had to get a blast of caffeine. I drink Mountain Dew. That's why I talk about it all the time. Excess caffeine consumption can lower the fertility in women. 350 milligrams per day will not only make it less likely that a woman will get pregnant, but will double the chance of a miscarriage. Excessive caffeine consumption has also been implicated in a woman's development of benign lumps in her breasts. Researchers also feel that caffeine may make it difficult to lose weight because caffeine triggers the release of insulin, which metabolizes sugar and in turn creates a deficit in the blood, which causes hunger. When my daughter was pregnant, she swore off caffeine, didn't drink any caffeine. It was tough on her. Of course, she didn't drink any alcohol or take any drugs. She wanted a perfect baby, and she got something close to it anyway. Since there are a number of different hereditary structures that dictate sensitivity and tolerance to caffeine, talking about amounts and effects varies from one individual to another. And as I told you, my brother is very sensitive. My mother was very sensitive to caffeine. My dad isn't sensitive at all, wasn't sensitive at all. My son's not sensitive at all, and I'm not sensitive at all. High caffeine consumers may actually get sleepy when only consuming small amounts of the substance because it activates the adenosine receptor sites. Withdrawal symptoms from caffeine begins after 12 to 24 hours of abstinence and peak after 24 to 48 hours. The symptoms can last for 2 days to a week. Throbbing headaches, sleepiness, fatigue, lethargy, depression, decreased alertness, sleep problems, irritability, flu-like symptoms, nausea, vomiting, muscle pains, or stiffness. And I've gone off of caffeine a number of times for one reason or another. One time when I was teaching up in Montana, my students bet me I couldn't not drink Mountain Dew. So I stopped, and I didn't have any headaches. None of this stuff happened, and I was pleased. My dad had heart problems, and when he'd go into the hospital, they wouldn't let him have coffee. But he never seemed to have any problems. Didn't have headaches, didn't get grouchy, didn't sleep excessively. Nicotine comes from the leaves of the tobacco plant. The tobacco plant is a member of the nightshade family, which also includes tomatoes, belladonna, henbane, and petunias. In the United States, 90% of the tobacco is delivered to its users as cigarettes. In India, 85% of all men use tobacco in the form of chewing tobacco. And that's an answer to a question on your quiz. Tobacco came to the Old World from the Americas, and it originally was smoked in pipes. In the 18th century, people began chewing the leaves and snorting the powder into their noses as snuff. Smokeless tobacco continued to be in the most popular use of tobacco until World War I. Around World War I, packaged cigarettes became popular in the trenches of Europe. This was possible because cigarette rolling machines improved. Cigarettes used a milder form of tobacco, which allowed deeper inhalation of the tobacco. Mass production produced lower prices. Advertising popularized the product. More aggressive marketing brought the product around the world. Heavy smokers in the United States will smoke 20 to 40 cigarettes per day. U.S. tobacco users spend $89 billion a year on tobacco products. 24.9% of the population over 12, 60.5 million Americans, smoked cigarettes in the past month. 51 million Americans smoke cigarettes every day. 13.6 million Americans smoke cigars every day. 2.2 million Americans smoke tobacco in pipes every day. 7.7 million Americans use smokeless tobacco every day. Smokeless tobacco comes in three forms: moist snuff, that is put in the mouth next to the gums; powdered or dry snuff, which is drawn up the nose; and loose leaf chew, which is put in the mouth and chewed. Moist snuff, another name for moist snuff is snus. It's kind of a Norwegian thing. Anyway, the active ingredient in tobacco is nicotine. Nicotine is a highly poisonous alkaloid that is bitter, smelly, and colorless. Tobacco leaves hold 2 to 5% of nicotine. Smoking tobacco delivers nicotine to the brain in 5 to 8 seconds. Smokeless tobacco delivers nicotine to the brain in 3 to 8 minutes. Cigarettes contain 10 milligrams of nicotine, but a typical smoker will only get 1 to 3 milligrams into their system with one cigarette. 70 milligrams of nicotine is fatal. Chewing tobacco will deliver 4.5 milligrams of nicotine to the brain, while snuff will deliver 3.5 milligrams. The first cigarette of the day will raise the heart rate by 10 to 20 beats and the blood pressure by 5 to 10 units. Nicotine affects the central nervous system and disrupts the following neurotransmitters: endorphins, epinephrine, norepinephrine, dopamine, and acetylcholine. Nicotine mimics acetylcholine, filling nicotinic acetylcholine receptor sites, exaggerating the cholinergic effects, increasing your heart rate, your blood pressure, your memory, your learning, reflexes, aggression, sleep, sexual activity, and mental acuity. Dopamine makes a smoker feel satisfied and calm. Thus, a cigarette both excites and tranquilizes. People continue to take the tobacco toxins because it's a ritual. There's also a ritual aspect to the lighting up and smoking. Smoking is perceived as an adult activity. It manipulates your mood. Dopamine does that. It appears to be rebellious. It is sexually attractive. It controls appetite, leading to weight loss. Nicotine is craved. Nicotine suppresses the appetite and increases metabolism. The average smoker weighs 6 to 9 pounds, lighter than the same sized non-smoker. It may be the fear of putting on weight that keeps some smokers from stopping. Smokers may also be self-medicating to combat depression. Smokers are twice as likely as non-smokers to experience major depression. Smokers who have experienced at least one major episode of depression are less likely to succeed in smoking cessation. Nicotine creates an intense craving when a select level is not maintained in the bloodstream and the brain. The mere act of lighting up activates the nucleus accumbens, giving the smoker a sense of reward. The rush is similar to the feeling that a heroin user gets when they relapse after an abstinent period. This use to escape withdrawal symptoms is called negative drug reinforcement. Only a few hours of smoking leads to neural adaptation to the toxicity of the nicotine. The first morning hit after a long night's sleep is said to feel especially rush-like as the individual builds the nicotine level back to their daytime norm. Unlike other drugs, nicotine does not continue to build up a tolerance, but the smoker finds a level of comfort that they attempt to maintain. Withdrawal from nicotine causes headaches, nervousness, fatigue, hunger, severe irritability, poor concentration, depression, increased appetite, sleep disturbances, intense nicotine craving. The individual has experienced a true physiological dependence as the individual has created an excess number of nicotinic acetylcholine receptors that are screaming to be occupied. Without the nicotine to occupy these sites, the result is irritability and discontent. The smoker needs the tobacco to feel normal. Researchers now realize that the feelings of relaxation and well-being that smokers feel when they light up is actually the feeling of having the withdrawal symptoms subdued. Nicotine addiction is a more powerful addiction than any other. While 23 million people have tried cocaine, only 600,000 people are weekly users and a rare few on a daily basis. 72 million people have tried marijuana, but only 6.8 million use it on a weekly basis, and only a fraction on a daily basis. 198 million people have tried alcohol, but only 48 million use it weekly and only 20 million on a daily basis. 162 million people have tried tobacco, 60 million smoke weekly, and 37 million people smoke daily. Nearly 1/4 of the people who try tobacco continue to use the drug daily, as compared to the fractions with other drugs, and 10% of people using alcohol. 80% of smokers say that they want to quit. 10% want to limit the amount that they smoke. Only 10% of smokers want to continue, yet 100% do continue to smoke or chew. Other countries have more serious problems with tobacco than the United States. China's use is 50% higher. England's use is 40% higher. Japan's use is 50% higher. Globally, 12% of women and 47% of men smoke. There may be a predilection to use tobacco. The DRD2A1 allele is seen as the culprit. A teen who smokes is 3 times more likely to abuse alcohol, 8 times more likely to abuse marijuana, 22 times more likely to abuse cocaine. Only 8% of black teens use tobacco, 15.7% of Hispanic teens use tobacco, 25.7% of white teens use tobacco. A teen who smokes is 3 times more likely to abuse alcohol, 8 times more likely to abuse marijuana, 22 times more likely to abuse cocaine. Only 8% of black teens use tobacco, 15.7%. I've already done that one. Nicotine contains from 4,000 to 48,000 chemicals. 400 are toxins, 69 are known cancer-causing substances. Worldwide, it is estimated that smoking causes 5 million premature deaths per year. 392,000 of these people are in the United States, 264,000 men, and 178,000 women. Lung cancer, heart disease, and lung disease are what kills these people. An additional 50,000 people die from secondhand smoke. 8.6 million Americans have at least one serious illness caused by smoking. It is estimated that a smoker loses 10 years off their life. Smoking accelerates the process of atherosclerosis by increasing low-density fats, increasing blood coagulability, triggering cardiac arrhythmias, reducing microrespiratory function by introducing carbon monoxide into the bloodstream. Carbon monoxide has a 230 times greater affinity for hemoglobin than oxygen does. That's why you are poisoned when there is just a little bit of carbon monoxide in the area. Your hemoglobin is seeking carbon monoxide. Oxygen, yeah, it's okay. But they really love carbon monoxide, 230 times greater. It's a vasoconstrictor. That's what you need to know about nicotine. 1/3 of all smokers' deaths are due to cardiovascular disease. 35,000 of these are from secondhand smoke. I think I told you about my friend we had the same heart attack. His wasn't quite as severe as mine, but he was a smoker, and he never regained consciousness. Mine was I had a larger blockage in my heart, but I survived because I don't smoke and because I exercise regularly, and he didn't, and he died. Bronchopulmonary diseases are far more prevalent among smokers than non-smokers. Emphysema, chronic bronchitis, and COPD, which means chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Children who live with smokers suffer from more asthma, colds, and bronchitis. 80 to 90% of all COPD deaths are due to smoking. Men who smoke are 22 times more likely to develop lung cancer than men who don't. Women who smoke are 12 times more likely to develop lung cancer than women who don't. 85% of men and 75% of women with lung cancer smoke. About 15% of mothers smoke during pregnancy. Nicotine and the byproduct carbon monoxide change some of the positive properties in the blood. Carbon monoxide blocks oxygen transport. Remember, it's got a 230 times greater affinity for carbon monoxide for the hemoglobin than oxygen. Nicotine makes platelets more sticky, increasing the possibility of a clot forming. Babies born to smokers have lower birth weight. They have a higher incidence of SIDS. Women who smoke during pregnancy are twice as likely to miscarry and have spontaneous abortions as non-smokers. Children whose mothers smoke during pregnancy have a 4 times greater chance of having ADHD. They have more conduct disorder, they have more drug dependence, they have more asthma, chronic bronchitis, and chronic respiratory symptoms. Smokeless tobacco can be as addicting as smoking because tobacco in smokeless tobacco forms contains more nicotine than smoked tobacco. People use more smokeless tobacco when they use. Smokeless tobacco has a higher pH, allowing it to pass into the capillaries more readily. One dip of smokeless tobacco delivers the same amount of nicotine as 3 to 4 cigarettes. At least the dipper is less likely to get lung cancer. However, because they put, what is that stuff? It cuts your gums. They put it in snus. They put it in dip. They put it in chewing tobacco. Can't think of it. It'll come to me in a second. Your gums are inflamed from use, causing more dental problems. There's a higher risk of oral cancer, pharyngeal cancer, esophageal cancer, cheek cancer, and gum cancer. A famous singer of the 50s, Cole was one of the first African American TV stars. He was a heavy smoker, and he died of lung cancer at age 45. Steve McQueen, a leading man of the 60s and 70s. Steve McQueen starred in such movies as The Great Escape and The Sand Pebbles. A heavy smoker all his life, McQueen died of lung cancer at age 50. Betty Grable, one of the blonde bombshells of the 40s and 50s. Gable was a famous pinup for World War II soldiers. They liked her sexy legs. She was a smoker to keep her figure. She died of lung cancer at age 56. Humphrey Bogart, known for his raspy voice and tough guy image, Bogart starred in films in the 40s and 50s in such films as Casablanca and The Maltese Falcon. His heavy smoking caught up with him in 1956 when he died of lung cancer at age 57. Known as the youngest Beatle, George Harrison was the first to die naturally at 58 from lung cancer. John Lennon was murdered in 1980. Harrison was a smoker and toker most of his life, and he died of lung cancer. The benefits of quitting using tobacco: 20 minutes after quitting, blood pressure and pulse rate drop, and the feet and hands warm to normal temperatures. Within 8 hours, the carbon monoxide level in the blood drops and oxygen levels increase, both to normal. Within 24 hours, the risk of sudden heart attack decreases. Within 48 hours, the nerve endings adjust to the absence of nicotine, while the sense of taste and smell return. Within 1 week, breathing improves and constricted blood vessels begin to relax. Within 2 to 12 weeks, circulation improves, lung function increases up to 30%, and the complexion begins to look healthy again. And this is her on when she's smoking, and this is her when she's not. Within 1 to 9 months, fatigue, coughing, sinus congestion, and shortness of breath decreases, and the lungs increase their ability to handle mucus. Within 1 year, the risk of coronary heart disease has been cut in half. Within 5 years, the heart disease rate has become that of a non-smoker. Within 10 years, the lung cancer rate drops to just above that of a non-smoker. Within 10 to 15 years, the disease rate has returned to that of a non-smoker. And that is the end. Fiberglass. They put fiberglass in smokeless tobacco. And the fiberglass, if you've ever been around that stuff, it's like a strip, and it's sharp, and it cuts you. It will cut you. If you sit on fiberglass, you'll get it in your legs, and it'll irritate your legs. But if you put it in your mouth, by golly, it cuts the inside of your mouth. Anyway, there you go. Wait a minute. What am I doing? There we are. Okay. Okay. Well, that was uppers. Next time we'll tackle downers. Just equally as much fun. We will also tackle alcohol and marijuana, as it's a hallucinogen. That's the all-arounders. So I'll see you guys next week.